It's live now? Okay. We've got 1 minute.
Good
evening, everybody online. The room is packed, just so you know. Expecting a lot more people online today.
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me by any chance?
Yes, we can. I thought you were on vacation. You weren't going to join tonight.
I am. I'm working on getting my camera up, but I may just have microphone.
Okay. Well, we're going to go into an executive session for about a half hour as soon as we get started here. What? That's on, isn't it?
Looks like it's on.
Oh, there it goes. There it goes. All right. Let's go ahead and start this real quick.
This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, one more button there. We got 2 green lights now. Oh, there it is. It's warming up. All right, good evening, everybody. It is June 21st, 2021. This is a regular meeting for the City Council of Woodland. At this time, we're going to be going into executive session under RCW 42.30.110, Section 1, Subsection B, consideration of site selection or acquisition of real estate purchase or lease. In likelihood that disclosure would increase the price. We'll also be discussing, and I don't have that one in front of me.
It's 4230.110, parentheses 1, discussion with legal counsel about current or potential litigation. And then the third one is discussion with legal counsel about legal risks of current or proposed action. 4230.110.
Thank you, Mr. Randolph. We will be in executive session for approximately 30 minutes.
Come back at what time?
Tell everyone to come back at 7:31 at this time.
Really, one of the things that we've seen is an uptick in the amount of retail sales tax the city is collecting. So roughly year over year, we collected an additional $130,000 if you're comparing the month of May with the month of May in the previous year. You do that on a 12-month schedule, that's about $1.5 million in additional revenue. So very pleased with that. We discussed a few water leaks and reviewed the annual report provided to, I believe, the auditors is what we reviewed. And our next meeting is scheduled for July 19th at 5:30, and we're hoping that that will be in the council conference room.
Okay. Thank you. Human Resources.
Yeah, we met today at 6 o'clock in person here in the council chambers. And pretty much the only thing we went over, we had some personnel changes. We had one employee recently decided to venture off into other avenues and left the employment of the city, which leaves an open spot, obviously, which we are now using temps to fill. And we are hoping to post the opening sometime soon. And that's about all we really talked about. Our next meeting is on Monday, July 19th, 2021 at 6 o'clock, right here at the council chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Plaza. Mrs. Graham, Chamber of Commerce.
The chamber office is still open 9 to 4, 7 days a week. We have started up having our chamber luncheon meetings at Casa Tapatía at 12 o'clock on Tuesdays, and we are very happy to see people coming out and sharing experiences and moving forward with that. And then our golf tournament is August the 20th, so if you have teams, prizes, bag stuffers, we're looking for it all. And moving forward and trying to, get speakers. So if we can have a city speaker at some point in time to get a hold of Denise Miller at the office. And I think that's about it on that. And I have one remark to make from over the weekend, just really quick too. I had a Marine, ex-Marine, retired Marine, come up to me, and him and a couple fellows, they stood there and looked in at the flags that, at Hoffman Plaza, and something needs to be addressed apparently, that it is improper for the flags to be even, that the state flag should be lowered below the American flag. So that was a bit of information, and hopefully that can be addressed.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mayor, isn't the same, we were just talking about this a second ago with the flag here in council chambers. Is that correct? Because it seems to me that they're the same height.
Well, the one has the adornment on top. I'll find out. We can always move the other one down a little bit as well. Maybe the other one's good. Yeah, I'll figure it out. We will have it handled immediately. Mr. Fredericks.
I'm not sure who's going to be speaking at chamber, but from the city, but when there is, can we be notified of that?
Sure.
Because I would like to attend.
Okay.
I have a feeling I think I know what the topic's going to be, and I want to be there.
When's this? You can't ask any questions.
We don't know yet. We don't know.
And when it
does
comes.
occur.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there lunch served at Casa Tapatia? Can I buy it?
You can order lunch.
Does it come with chips and salsa?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
No alcohol.
Well, I won't be the speaker. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I was gonna say, you people drive me to drink.
At some point, when we open back up, you should start having your little,
I just wrote it down. I did. I was like, oh, well, that's a good point to get that scheduled as well. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mrs. Graham. Moving on to reports of myself and Mr. Boyce this evening. Planters Days, another enjoyable event. I liked the folks that came out to the parking lots. You know, they couldn't come inside, but they were out in the parking lot cheering the girls on, so that was nice. And of course, being part of that for another year was amazing. Everyone should know, if you haven't already seen, Public Works did put out some signage down Garrett Street going into downtown of the repaving. As you're aware that there was some emergency repairs that needed to be done. That was brought before council a couple of weeks ago, probably 2-3 weeks ago, where we had to actually do some grinding before we could actually do the paving. I just want to let everyone know that that's going to be a 4-week process. Ms. Coleman says that it's going to be impacts there for about 4 weeks through that section, and that this is a 2-year project that we've been planning, and this was not something that was done to prevent activities from occurring within the city. Ironically, I think it was just a series of events that occurred, but we don't have time to venture out to shut down events or prevent people from coming and going within the city, not to mention the fact that that type of project cannot just be planned on the fly. That has been in the works for 2 years. So it is possible the things that you read on the internet are not true, Mr. Plaza. And then also one last announcement, July 6th, we will be back. That will be our first regular meeting in July, and as long as nothing occurs with the governor's orders, we will be back in here with staff and everyone back on the dais with chairs out here in the gallery. And that evening, as it is our first gathering, I've asked that we've been holding off on some recognition of some employees at the police department. So we will be having a reception at 6:30 that evening with presentation during regular council time at 7 p.m. So our first city event post-COVID will be recognition of our police officers and the police departments and all the wonderful things they've been doing over the past well over a year since we've been closed down. So looking forward to that.
and that's a Tuesday.
That's a Tuesday, yes. That is a Tuesday. Thank you, yes, because Monday
Yes.
is the holiday, so that will be on Tuesday.
Well, Monday is to recognize for the holiday.
Right.
July 6th.
Sunday's the
Make sure I
actual.
got that right. I think it's July 6th.
Yeah,
July 6th.
you got
yes.
it, Will.
So we will be here having some fellowship. Hopefully, nothing changes between now and the 30th.
Mayor,
Yes.
there was an event in downtown this Friday night. Did it comply with all the city regulations? Was it on private property? Everything was good there?
You know, it was grinding.
It was. Thank you for asking, Mr. Fredericks. I know there was a lot of things. We were very active in engaging the organizer with communication. The city was not involved with that. We did not get permission for that, and it was all held on private property. My understanding is there were no reports of blockages or shenanigans, I guess, or sidewalks being blocked or roadways being closed. And that was the city's concern, but again, that was a private event, and the city doesn't get involved with private events such as those, so it's, there was no permit given, and one wasn't needed at this time.
Super.
Okay. Is that political enough?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Boyce?
Okay, just a couple things I wanted to mention. We're still working with the Cowlitz Fire District regarding the annexation agreement, which will be used to transfer assets between the two entities. So that will come to City Council later in the year. Just wanted to let you know we're still working on it. Also, as the mayor stated, we're watching what's going to happen with the governor's office and keeping our fingers crossed that restrictions will go away at the end of the month. When that happens, we're hoping to reopen City Hall. Also, we will start taking reservations for city facilities, the rentals, after the 1st of July. The reason we're not taking reservations right now is simply because we need some certainty over what's going to happen, and we really don't have the staff to cancel reservations on a large basis. So hopefully things go as planned. We can reopen July 1 and move on from there. So those were the two items. Just also wanted to mention the Planning Commission meets July 15th at 7 p.m. And that is my report for this evening.
Questions for Mr. Boyce? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Moving on to consent items.
Move to adopt the consent items.
Second. Moved by Councilmember Frederick, second by Councilmember Plaza. All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to action items. Action item C, ordinance number 1485, interloan fund from Fund 301 to Fund 320, first and final reading.
Move to adopt ordinance number 1485, first and final reading.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Frederick, second by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Fredericks.
We discussed this evening in the Finance Committee meeting, and this is in line with what we need to do here. We have a shortage in this fund, so we are making a loan to it. It will be paid back with interest, and it will comply with all audit fiduciary requirements of the state. So I am urging adoption of this ordinance.
Councilmember Rounds.
No comment.
Further discussion. Councilmember Plaza.
Quick question, Just a quick question, real quick. On the first page, it says that the interest, said loan shall bear interest at the rate of 0.14%. But on page 2, in section 1, it says said loan shall bear interest at the rate of 0.10%. So which one is it?
I think it's that one, 0.10. It's not 10%, it's 0.10.
Well, 0.10, 0.10.
And the first one was, what was the?
And that's a question for Ms. Anderson, because there are two different numbers, but I believe
What was on the first page?
14.
0.14, 0.14%.
Okay.
But there is 0.10 on another page, and I
Yeah.
believe that that's the number. If Ms. Anderson is still with us. Is she here?
Not.
She's not.
Oh, well, maybe she is. Mrs. Anderson, are you on the line? Got a couple of organizers here. Mr. Boyce?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so do you hear the question?
Yes, I did. So the correct number would be what's in the ordinance.
Okay, so the
0.1077.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plaza. Further discussion? Thank you, Mr. Boyce. All right, seeing none, take the roll on action item C, ordinance number 1485. Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to action item D, authorize mayor to sign agreement to extend the completion date for housing grant.
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement to extend the completion date for the housing grant.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Fredericks, second by Councilmember Holland. Councilmember Fredericks.
I have no discussion.
Councilmember Holland.
No discussion.
Further discussion. All right, I'll take the roll on action item D, authorize mayor to sign agreement to extend the completion of a housing grant, of the housing grant. Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
That'll be a no.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 5-1. Moving on to action item E, ordinance number 1477, adoption of 2018 International Building Code, first and final reading.
Move to approve action item E, ordinance 1477, adoption of the 2018 International Building Code. First and final reading.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Plaza, seconded by Councilmember Chapman. Councilmember Plaza.
No comment.
Councilmember Chapman.
No comment.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll take the roll on action item E, ordinance number 1477, adoption of 2018 International Building Code, first and final reading. Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Frederick.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to action item F, ordinance number 1479, adoption of 2018 International Fire Code, first and final reading.
Move to approve ordinance 1479.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Chapman, seconded by Councilmember Rounds. Councilmember Chapman.
No comment.
Councilmember Rounds.
No comment.
Further discussion, Mr. Fredericks.
Yeah, I have an issue with this as it stands, and I'm going to refer to section 903.2.11.3, which says buildings greater than 2 stories in height, all buildings greater than 2 stories in height shall have installed an automatic fire sprinkler system. So what this means is, we're also talking about housing affordability. What this means is that every home constructed that is 2 stories in height in the city of Woodland, roughly at a cost of $1.35 per square foot on a 2,500 square foot home, raises the price to $3,375. So, as far as I'm concerned, that seems like a lot to me. In a report by the NFPA in July of 2017, on page 19 of that report, the NFPA says that 29,800 sprinkler activations caused system failure or malfunction, and 33,600 were unintentional sprinkler activations in 2014. What this means is that if your sprinkler system fails, you're going to get stuck with a very nice bill. Now, I understand that the fire department wants to keep us all safe, and, you know, we ought to never have any issues that would ever prevent fire, or never have anything that, you know, God forbid that would happen to you. They're trying to keep you safe in everything that we do. But we need to understand that there's a cost associated with that. And I don't necessarily agree with that cost. I think it's too much for a value of the home. And so therefore, I'd like to make a motion here that would override the motion that's currently on the floor. I'd like to refer this item to the Public Safety Committee for recommendation and further study on those costs. And at that point, Mr. Jackson can make his case about why this is so wonderful and good for everyone and why we should adopt it. But at the same
Mr.
time...
Fredericks, did you want a second on that motion?
Yes, I'll stop and discuss it.
Second it.
Motion on the floor by Councilmember Frederick, seconded by Councilmember Rounds, to take action item F, refer to the Public Safety Committee for recommendation with study. Mr. Fredericks.
Yes, and specifically what I'd like to study is the additional costs associated for those homes. And I don't necessarily disagree with a commercial establishment, if that's what you want to do. But I think in the spirit of making homes affordable, which is what we talk about all the time, I think asking everyone to pay, most of the homes in my neighborhood are two-story homes. My home would cost roughly $5,000 to equip it with, on new construction, that's what the cost would be to put fire suppression unit in my home. I think that's, we have some new homes that are going to be going in off of, very close to Miss Holland's area. I don't even know what you would refer to that area as. Someone else could speak to that. But if they're two-story homes, all of those homes would require a sprinkler system. 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, you're looking at $3,500 to $4,000 in additional. And that'll get passed on to the buyer.
Can I give you some information real quick?
Sure.
Chief Jackson has just responded saying the language is for buildings over 2 stories in height, not 2-story structures.
Over 2 stories in height. Let me see. All buildings greater than 2 stories in height. So then I would ask Mr. Jackson, anywhere in this, does it require sprinkler systems in residential homes less than 5,000 square feet?
Chief Jackson?
I believe I understood the question. It was asking about requirements for fire sprinklers in 1 and 2 family homes other than the 5,000 square
No,
feet.
in residential structures over 5,000 square feet or greater. Or was that the question?
So the question is there anything
Yes.
that, if there's anything in this,
Residential structures would require fire sprinklers if they're over 5,000 square feet, if they're over 2 stories in height, or in the areas where there are limited access, so flag lots, private drives, private bridges, which are pretty few and far between and not really much of an issue in the city, but those with those access restrictions would require fire sprinklers.
so nothing less than 5,000 square feet on a residential would be required for fire suppression?
Unless it has an access restriction, like it is on a flag lot, has a slope greater than 12% to get to it, narrow private drive, private bridge, or is greater than 2 stories in height.
Well, Mr. Jackson, I stand
The
corrected.
things that I just listed were larger than 5,000 square feet.
Mr. Jackson, I stand corrected, and I completely read that in error, and I will be voting against my motion. Thank you.
This is fun. Mrs. Rouse?
No comment. I agree with Mr. Frederick, so.
Further discussion? Seeing none, motion on the floor is to refer action item F to the Public Safety Committee for recommendation with study. Councilmember Chapman?
No.
Councilmember Holland?
No.
Councilmember Plaza?
No.
Councilmember Graham?
No.
Councilmember Rounds?
No.
Councilmember Fredericks?
No.
I thought you were going to say aye. The motion has failed. Back to the original motion on the floor by Councilmember Chapman and seconded by Councilmember Rounds. Adoption of ordinance number 1479, 2018 International Fire Code, first and final reading. Councilmember Chapman.
Still no more comment.
Councilmember Rounds.
No comment.
Further discussion.
The only language that I thought that there was equal to 2 stories in height. Apparently, I was adding my own language. Thank you. Thank you for going down that rabbit hole with me.
You're welcome, Ben. We're here for you.
15 minutes, we'll never get that. Anything else? All right, we'll take a vote on action item F, ordinance number 1479, 2018 International Fire Code. Councilmember Fredericks.
Aye.
Councilmember Plaza.
Aye.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Councilmember Chapman.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The time is now 8:46. We are moving into a workshop. 3 different items. First one on the list is housing affordability study. And I'm going to kick this over to Mr. Goddard. Oh, I'm Miss Johnston. I'm sorry.
I say.
I forgot. I'm sorry. Yes. Melissa.
She's pretty.
Yes, thank you. I am screen sharing now. Are you able to see this?
We're good to go.
Wonderful. And you can hear me okay? Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, City Council. I'm Melissa Johnston. I'm Associate Planner with City of Woodland in the Community Development Department. And I have been working with Travis Goddard on the Housing Action Plan grant. One of the deliverables that we are required to do for this grant is the housing needs assessment. So I'll be presenting the data that we have collected for this assessment and analyzed. So this is informational tonight, and you will see this data referenced in future conversations when we discuss adopting our new proposed housing action plan and when we discuss the code changes down the road. So tonight this will be a walkthrough of our current local housing data, future needs, and we'll be projecting out to 2040. So for the data sources, I compiled these data using a workbook provided by the Washington State Department of Commerce for housing needs assessments. And the sources of data that I used are from the Census Bureau, the American Community Survey, the 5-year survey. Also data from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, that's HUD, and I used their CHAS data, the Comprehensive Housing Affordability Strategy. I've used our comprehensive plan and Zillow. All of this data was customized for Woodland city limits. Here's a look at our population projection. We were at 5,912 population in 2018. We're around 6,000 now. We're projected to have 9,600 people in 2040. That would be average annual growth of 3% per year. As far as our household size and the age of the occupants, we look to be staying about the same between 2010 and 2018. Our average household size is about 2.94. That's a little higher than the national average. And it looks like the ages of our occupants haven't changed too much over these years. We did see a little bit of an increase in renters versus owners. So as far as housing units, by far we have more single-family residences than any other type of housing, and that's still growing steadily. I'll point out that the percentage column you're seeing on the far right is percent total of the 2018 column. So we have more single-family residences than any other type. About 67% of our housing is single-family residential. And here's a look at how large our housing is in terms of bedrooms. In 2018, about 35% of housing units had 2 or less bedrooms. 65% of housing units had 3 or more bedrooms. And just to keep in mind, our average household size is 2.94 people, a little less than 3. So household income, our household income in Woodland is just shy of $62,000 per year. Then I will use that to talk a little bit about home ownership affordability. So here's a look at our median household income. Again, that's about $62,000, and this is broken down into income brackets. And then also notice at the bottom of this table, we're now looking at the average home sale price in our community is $442,491. So looking a little bit more deeply into affordability, again, our average home price is $442,000 or so. And then if you look at the given expenses that would go along with a home purchase of that price, that would require an annual household income of $94,000 to afford or comfortably afford a house of that price. A bottom tier home in our community is $353,000 about. Bottom tier means a typical value for a home that falls within the 5th and 35th percentile range for a given region. So to buy a bottom tier home in Woodland, you would need a household income of about $75,000 a year to afford one of our bottom tier homes. So keeping in mind that our average income is around $62,000, about 75% of our population cannot afford an average priced home in our community, and around 60% cannot afford a bottom tier home in our community. In general, what stuck out to me as I went through this data and analyzed it is that in general, houses in Woodland are pretty large. Over 50% are 3 bedrooms or more. And how expensive the houses are in comparison to our average income definitely stuck out to me as I looked at this data. So I'll leave us with this general overview here, this big picture. This is a look again at our upcoming growth. We're expecting to need to provide for about 57 households per year for a total of 1,315 by 2040. And so we'll be looking at this data as we do our proposed housing action plan. We'll be continuing to look at this data as we are looking at our code changes that we're going to provide. So you'll keep seeing these data as we bring these projects to you down the road. As we are still working on this project, I am interested if you have any questions or thoughts, or if you have any data analysis that you would like for us to add to this housing needs assessment.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Ms. Rounds.
Oh, Mrs. Rounds.
Well, I was just going to say, it seems funny to me that when any house goes on sale here, there's a bidding war on it. So if we're only at $46,000, how can they bid up these $350,000 homes and just keep bidding on them to buy? So I think the cost, or the average of the household incomes are higher than what we're projecting here.
They're just not people who are from here. Woodlanders
Yeah, but
are not.
they're moving here.
Right, but Woodlanders, existing Woodlanders, fit inside of a certain income bracket, and those folks cannot afford a house currently for sale in town. So
Or
they have-
any other town then.
Well, not in this town, the town in which they live, like.
Yeah, I know, but I don't think they could in any other town either then.
That's why everybody's going north. Like literally a house on the lake in Longview, 100 and some odd thousand. 50-year-old house in my neighborhood, 350,000.
But I think after the moratorium is taken off, where the price of houses are going to go down because people that have not been paying mortgages, there's going to be a flood on the market. And so I think we'll have plenty of housing and it'll be affordable.
Councilmember Fredericks.
2 things. I would make a case that if you want affordable housing, leave the area. I mean, really, that's if you want affordable housing, look to where places are affordable. I can think of a few: Florida, Texas, and Tennessee. Very reasonable costs, very low regulation.
Idaho.
Idaho is becoming more expensive in Boise area, but I think that's really, for whatever reason, the costs here are higher, and I'm not sure what's driving that. But it's nice to know that it isn't fire suppression systems in homes that are driving that cost. One of the questions that I do have, Ms. Johnston, is there a direct correlation between the cost of labor and the cost of homes? So when you argue this, when you make a case of everybody should be paid a living wage, and maybe living wage now is $15, that's what it was. They told us we had to get to 15. We see these rising wages. And is there a direct correlation with rising wages and costs for homes and rent?
I understand or hear the question correctly, is that if we raise minimum wage, then does housing prices increase afterwards?
Yeah, is there a direct correlation between those two?
Yes.
And rent?
That's
Mortgage and rent?
And rent. Rent. So that's a great question. I haven't looked into that before, but I can report back at a future council meeting, or Travis Goddard to report back.
Well, it just seems to me when you raise the price of wages, something else has to go up. So, or you change your behavior. An example would be when I go to McDonald's now, there's not 3 people at the cash registers anymore, there's 1, and there's a spot for me to do my own order. So the market kind of drives that. So I guess that would be the reason I raised that, is if you raise the price of something, in this case labor, does that have a direct correlation for housing and rental costs? I'm curious. I know it does.
I'm gonna turn.
But I have a strong sneaking suspicion that it does. But is there any statistical evidence that's non-biased that points us in that direction? And when I say non-biased, sometimes we have biased information that we get from the Housing and Urban Development group that might argue otherwise. But I'd be really interested to see if you could drum up anything.
Well, numbers technically aren't biased. And so it stands to reason, well, depending on whose numbers you listen to.
Depends on who's giving it to you.
Well, that's the thing. But of course, if you raise the cost of labor, for example, just to use one industry, the lumber industry, which is part of building a house. If you raise the cost of labor, the cost of the wood is going to go up, which is going to raise the cost of your house.
Well, I agree, Mr. Plaza. I think it raises when you raise labor, it raises the costs of everything. So when you talk about a $15 minimum wage, why don't we make it $50 and everybody will be paying $15 for a gallon of milk? But everything raises when we raise the price of labor. Yeah.
Well, in the real world it is, but when you're doing, not to go off on a tangent, but in the world of politics, where all you care is about getting the message in order to get the vote, you know that you can tell everybody, hey, we'll just raise the minimum wage to $20 and we'll all live happily ever after. The majority of people aren't going to look into it and see what the real world effects are, and that person's going to get the votes, and then they're not going to do anything.
You just pack the ballot box and don't have to worry about it.
Excellent. Well, I just wanted to raise that because it seems as though when you raise the price of labor, everything else goes up. And I was wondering, does it raise the price of rent, and does it raise the price of buying a home? It seems to me that it would, but I don't know if Ms. Johnson can find any data that tells us that. I'd be interested to know.
I'm going to kick this over to Mr. Goddard right now as well. He's got some comments he'd like to share.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So there's another wrinkle in this that I would also like to throw out on the table for your consideration, and that is one of the statistics Melissa discussed, and that is that the majority of construction within the city of Woodland has been single-family residential. And one of the odd quirks is that typically you would expect single-family residential to be owner-occupied, which means your renters, the percentage of renters in the community would go down as you build more houses and there is less multifamily, whether it be apartments or condominiums. You would think the number would be related. But in fact, what has been happening, and we've been seeing this in the planning industry kind of across the board, and that is the American dream is changing, not necessarily because families don't desire to build homes, but because wealth is built in real estate, and so you're getting massive amounts of commercial investing in the real estate market, and they turn around and rent those homes after they're constructed. So whereas, you know, in the 50s on, the single or the family's single most valuable asset was the home, whereas now, as was brought up by a couple of the council members, the average family is not able to come up with a bag of cash so that they can purchase a home when it's on the market, whereas the commercial investing industry can. So they're often bidding things up and making it unaffordable for single-family residential, which is why you're starting to see this reversal, because a large number of the homes, and I've read articles up to 40% of the homes that come on the market are bought by investors, and they are not bought by single or families. So that's going to be a disturbing trend going forward, especially if you only build single-family residential. And we know we have some multifamily projects that are coming on board, and we know those are not owner-occupied. Those will also be rentals. So it's entirely possible that Woodland could trend significantly in the future towards significantly lower owner-occupied homes, whether we build single-family or multifamily. So that is affecting the housing market across the entire country. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Mr. Fredericks?
It seems like we're trying to promote affordability, and I think we're trying to nudge people in the direction of affordability, but in my mind, the market will drive demand of an item. So if in this case right now we have a hot market, prices are going up, we've got inflation going up, is there a point where you see where policy could be made that government is going to start building homes because government can make things more affordable? Because they can make anything more affordable if they want to and subsidize it. Do you see us ever getting to a point where that's exactly what we're going to be doing, is very similar to what we might find in, say, Russia, China, where we are providing a government residence at a subsidized cost, which will then, I guess, would deflate the market because you can't compete against the government? Your thoughts on that, Mr. Goddard?
Me?
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Goddard.
You know, that is a really hard question to answer. I can see that there are going to be some jurisdictions who are going to be able to find ways to take action. But I also believe that the future of government is, especially in Washington State where you're limited to 1%, is I believe governments are going to have to start cutting, and significantly cutting our public services, not providing additional services. So I don't believe the market will allow the government to take action in significant ways like you're talking, where like for example the city of Woodland building residential units and making them affordable. I'm sorry, I just don't think that the financial picture for the city of Woodland would allow us to be to even consider moving in that direction.
I should be clear, Mr. Goddard.
It's realistic.
I should be clear, Mr. Goddard. I was talking about the federal government, not any local jurisdiction or even state. That the federal government having subsidized housing and doing what a dream a dream about any city planner would be, is shoving many, many people into the smallest space possible, at a subsidized, reduced cost, picked up by the taxpayer.
In my opinion, the answer to that is no, but I'll be honest, I don't know enough about national politics to think that whether that's realistic or not.
Just curious on your thoughts, Mr. Goddard. Thank you.
I do have a question. Have we looked, so that was, the data and the information that was given during the presentation was for individuals within the city. As I make my way around town and listen to and even other organizations within town that service beyond the city limits, have we looked at the county versus the city and what their needs are? I know the school district would probably say that, well, that's great and all that you're showing 64,000, but you know, we have a large student population where it's a single family household and maybe they're only making 40,000. Because we are a city that services a number of individuals outside of the city limits with organizations and services. So is it possible that we could look at those as well? Or is that too big of a scope?
Yep. I think we can look at that because I believe Cowlitz County is looking at their housing action plan as well. In fact, a lot of communities in Southwest Washington, we're all doing the same grant program right now, so we all have similar data sets. I can get their data. They've probably already done this analysis. If not, it would be with some work possible for me to replicate this study for Cowlitz County.
I think the one problem we are going to run into, though, is when we compare the two is Cowlitz County does not collect impact fees for schools, parks, fire, and transportation. And I think the city needs to be very careful about making our affordability plan to include the county, the growth of residential development in the county, because right off the top it's $12,000 cheaper to build in the county. That's because they don't pay their fair share of schools or fire impacts or transportation impacts. So I think it would be bad policy for us to consider that as, or we just need to be very careful when we're comparing apples to oranges for that exact reason.
So it'd pay for people.
Because the only other option would be for us to start waiving our impact fees so that our homes are also cheaper.
So it'd be more affordable for people to move out in the county.
Yes.
So we shouldn't worry about it.
Well, as long as you don't mind subsidizing.
Well, no, I know. I don't want to do that, but we have impact fees that increase ours.
Well, then that's the old adage of who should pay for it. We already paid our way. Now, should we just not let no impact fees?
Right.
We could have no impact fees, just like the county does. But then, is that right? Paid our way.
Right.
We just have to be careful that we don't get any more subsidized housing in here because we're already in bad shape now.
Property taxes.
Any further questions for Mrs. Johnston and the information presented?
I just kind of think it's interesting that, like, HUD exists for a reason, and you have housing authorities in every county everywhere building multi-unit places to put people. So there's one out by Roy Moore's Park, I think, in Longview. That one, Housing Opportunities of Southwest Washington is overseeing that, and that's like huge apartment complex. And Vancouver owns subsidized properties all over, like, everywhere to put people. So, like, while we were having this conversation, I was looking at OSPI for the school district, because last year, half the school district, half the kids in the school district were low income. So that would imply that they all live outside city limits, I guess?
Well, I guess I would have to ask the question, what exactly is considered low income?
That is.
I would need to start there for me. That's
Right.
So I can understand.
This last year, you can't really count as the, during COVID, they made it so that, gosh, you could make like 70K and still qualify for a reduced lunch.
okay.
Any other time, it's, I think, a family of 4 is, I'd have to look, but I seem to think it's like a normal amount of like 40 some odd thousand a year or
Okay.
under. I'd have to look. This last year, I ignored all of last year because it was insane. They changed the rules for everything. But yeah. But it's just kind of interesting. I mean, that's how... So I don't think anybody remembers that, like Tulip Valley, for instance, that's an apartment complex, and Hawthorne House was an apartment complex for assisted living, and then the apartments across the way, they were all owned by commercial realtor people, privately owned, I guess. And then the housing authority purchased them and took them over. So they were once, I think they just kind of got ran down in disrepair. Housing Opportunities of Southwest Washington owns almost all the apartment complexes in this town, by the way. I don't know if anybody knows that. I just find it kind of interesting that that's who has bought everything, and the Catholic Archdiocese owns one of the biggest apartment complexes here. I mean, we have poor people. Poor people deserve a place to live. So, anyway, that's just my comment, just cause.
Thank you, Mrs. Holland.
Ms. Holland brings up a very good point. I think the challenge is how much is enough? And I really do think that is something that's on the ballot in this election here in the city of Woodland. Is how much, I don't know if low income is the word to use these days, I'm afraid I'm going to buy it as but how much is enough? And are the folks that are living around us, are they taking on their fair share of having these types of high-density residential in their neighborhoods, like Ridgefield, like La Center, like Kalama?
Right.
It seems as though, and I'm not going to, it seems as though we get more of our fair share in this community of that. And I think that time and time again, I hear pleads from the school board, or not the school board, but the school, folks that work in the schools about, please be careful with your policy on allowing this in the city of Woodland. Be very careful on what you allow, because you're killing us. And so I agree that yes, they need places to live, but I think the argument becomes how much is enough for one community.
I don't disagree
Yeah,
with you.
and I think there's a fine line with, let's just let them keep coming, and I think that's the big concern with a lot of folks that, especially in the schools, I hear from them the most, because it's a challenge for them.
Well, if you let them keep coming, that average income is going to go down. And you're not going to draw any people that want to have a nice home in Woodland.
Well, I think you're going to make the picture look a lot worse than it is.
Right. Right.
There we go.
So
Here we go.
vaccine,
Oh,
you should be able to map.
there isn't anything up there.